Before we do that, over at BangTheBook.com, tons of stuff at your disposal, lots of things for you to check out. That matchup data section allows you to take a side-by-side comparison of all of the games that are going on out there, even the ones that we don't have game previews up for, especially on the college basketball side. But you can check that out over there at the website. Points for, points against, trends, defensive and offensive statistics, all kinds of stuff in that matchup data section that can help you out, at least give you a baseline and give you some information on those particular games. We got college football and NFL power ratings posted up over there at the website as well. Parker Michaels' daily NHL picks have been a big hit, and they're also on quite a nice run here. So if you're not checking out that article every day, make sure that you make an adjustment and start doing that. Also, the contests. As we head here into the month of December, you got bowl season coming up, plenty of college basketball going on. Get involved in those contests over there at BangTheBook.com. Just sign up with an email address. You'll get a daily newsletter from us. That's all we'll do with your email address, and it'll get you entry into those free contests with cash prizes available for the top monthly win percentage, top ROI, top number of units won, daily streaker, and monthly pick of the day contests as well. So plenty of options over there at BangTheBook.com, where we are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Finally, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio is presented by DSI Sportsbook. If you sign up over at DSI using the promo code BTB and the number 25, you get a $25 free bet just for signing up. 100% deposit match bonus for the sportsbook, 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino as well. At BetDSI, it's only a game until you bet it. Two segments come your way here today to wrap up this week on Bang the Book Radio. The first, our Westgate SuperContest Selections segment. My Bang the Book podcast entry sitting at 28 and 32 right now. Hoping for a good week here. I really like 3 of the games on the card. Going to have to find 2 more out of what else is out there. But I talked about that with Joe Everett from NFL Draft Bible. We recapped last week in the contest and then took a look ahead here at Week 13. So here is this week's Westgate SuperContest Selection segment with myself and Joe Everett. All right, I'm joined now by Joe Everett from NFL Draft Bible. He's going to fill in this week for the Westgate SuperContest Selection segment here in Week 13, my Bang the Book podcast entry, 28 and 32 on the year. Joe, how's it going today, man?
I'm going real well. I'm doing better than Arizona State football fans, that's for sure. I have no clue what Herm Edwards knows about recruiting, but I guess we're going to find out soon, Adam.
You know what? I know this is about the Super Contest, but since you brought it up, like when Illinois hired Lovie Smith, I kind of thought to myself, okay, at least the guy's still coaching. You know, I think that he'll resonate with the African-American players they have, and maybe that's something with Herm Edwards as well. But, at least he was still coaching. He was still in the game. He's a very good defensive mind, so that's something that Illinois needed since they're probably never going to score a whole lot of points. But he was still relevant. Herm Edwards hasn't coached in almost 10 years. I don't know what's going on. He hasn't been a college coach since the late 80s. I don't know what's going on with that hire. That's really, really strange.
Yeah, I don't know why they dusted him off. And, boy, I hate to say it, but I'm kind of looking forward to next year already, licking my chops, fading Arizona State. And they haven't seen the last of Todd Graham either. So that's so much to look forward there for Sun Devil fans.
I don't get it, man. With all the good coordinators that are out there, all the good group of 5 head coaches, and that's an attractive job in Tempe. You've got a good fan base. It's a nice place to go. You don't have to go and coach on the sidelines in 20-degree weather. That's a nice place for head coaches. It's an attractive job. I mean, they get some talent down there. They've had some pretty decent teams under Todd Graham, and then prior to that, Herm Edwards. All right. I don't get it, man. I gotta say before I'll probably go off on a long tangent here, but every time I watch an NFL game, I see at least 4 or 5 coaching decisions over the course of a game, where I ask myself, what the hell are these guys thinking? And then I see it even more in college football. And then you see some of these hires that these athletic departments make, and I don't understand. Like, maybe I just don't get it, but there are so many questionable decisions from ownership to the GMs to the coaches in NFL and from ADs on down in college football. I don't know how some of these people have jobs, man. I just don't know. I don't get it.
Considering the alternative, that's what every year I think Graham was there. He's like top 50 in defense, and those days are going to be gone. The days of them sapping all the talent from the JUCO ranks are gone. I think they're going to rue this day.
Absolutely, and who knows? I mean, maybe that's something that we'll talk about here a little bit down the road as well. But As far as the Super Contest goes, pretty decent week for the field last week. 6,783 winners, 5,999 losers, 638 pushes, 53.07%, now 49.23% on the year, and that is a number that's been climbing. And as we kind of talked about, and Joe, you mentioned this on our Monday segment, favorites doing very well, the public doing very well. Probably not a big surprise to see a contest of this size increasing in terms of the success rate. Now just 0.1 of a percentage point behind the Super Contest Gold, which to me would be the biggest upset of the season if the traditional Super Contest has a higher success rate than the Gold, which is now 49.33%, 51.64% last week. But that is kind of the thing. I mean, we've sort of talked about this, and I talked about it as well when I recorded the odds report with Brent. It's just one of those years where favorites are finding ways to cover, and all the old adages, the philosophies, the theories from sharp guys in the NFL, you fade a team that's at its highest point, like a Philadelphia, doesn't seem to matter. Dolphins couldn't cover 16.5 last week. It's just one of those years in the NFL, Joe.
Yeah, and just last week, I think, personified that. We had all those double-digit that lines out there, and a lot of them hit. Some of them were just inexplicable, like Miami just being Miami. But, that Philadelphia machine just keeps on rolling. And just some teams, I think, too, waking up from last year, Atlanta, finally realizing they have one of the best players in the league. But you can't imagine they're going to, 9-3, 9-4? Or I guess 9-3-1, but whatever it was on Sunday, that's just ridiculous. I can't imagine that's going to continue.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, Pittsburgh didn't cover as a double-digit favorite, but Philadelphia covered with ease. New England covered with relative ease. I mean, they felt like they were in control of that game throughout. Once again, line value considered to be on the Browns, who failed to cover. I mean, that's just a lather, rinse, repeat thing at this point. Carolina got bet all the way up to 6 and barely found a way to cover, and probably shouldn't have in that game. Seattle even covered a touchdown number on the road against San Francisco. So it was just one of those weeks. So, we'll see if we get the same setup here in week 12, week 13? I don't even know what week it is anymore at this point. It's just the way that the NFL season has gone almost has me so disenfranchised. But it is week 13 here. And, Joe, before we get into my picks for the Super Contest, I've got 3 of my picks squared away here. I got a couple of leans. I just want to ask you, overall, in terms of looking at the card here, you have these premier matchups of the Vikings and Falcons. You've got another pretty good matchup here between the Panthers and Saints. And then you've got a lot of games that traditionally would be pretty good matchups, like a Tampa Bay Green Bay, like a Philadelphia Seattle, like a Pittsburgh Cincinnati, and they just don't really live up to the expectation this year. So, what would your approach be with those games that are traditionally supposed to be heavyweight fights that are now kind of heavyweight versus lightweight?
Well, you want to look for value where you can, but I'm definitely taking one of those that Vikings game is just too tempting to me. And at times like these, too, I like to fall back on coaching. Just love Zimmer to death. But, yeah, it's I don't know. I guess we'll get into that Steelers game, but you see a line like that, and it's like, well, this shouldn't be much of a game. Is that line wrong kind of thing? So that's where I guess you got to be a little bit leery seeing some of these games at the end of this Sunday schedule. Like, Chiefs, Jets. It's like, well, sure, the Chiefs have more talent, but do they? These Chiefs of late, it's I don't know if I had to describe that card, from 4 o'clock on out, a little trappy.
Yeah, that certainly could be the case there. We've got 2 new leaders in the Super Contest here as we head into Week 13. Granny's Boy now leads the traditional Super Contest, 41.5 points. For the money there is 36.5 points, which coincidentally is the leading score in the Super Contest Gold. Brett Favre, 444, so maybe Brett Favre coming out of football retirement to lead the Super Contest Gold here by a half point over BKSF, who went 0-5 and fell to second. That's somebody that's been in the lead, I think it's 7-8 weeks in a row, something like that now, but picks up the 0-5, and just like that, the lead is gone. So again, in the Super Contest here, things can change very, very quickly. Top 5 consensus, 26-34 on the year. Top 5 consensus in the Gold, 29-30-1. But there have been some games in the top 5 consensus that have had the same number of picks. So that's kind of a little bit of a mess there with, obviously a limited number of selections available for everybody. But we'll head on into Week 13 here. We're going to start with a game I know you and I disagree on a little bit. That's the Baltimore Ravens. They're rotation number 3 in the Super Contest. 2.5-point favorite here against the Detroit Lions. And they are catching a Lions team off of extra rest. But Detroit, with a couple of key offensive line injuries, their center Swanson and their guard Lang, both not practicing here on Thursday. Matt Stafford's been sacked 10 times in the last 3 weeks, 36 times overall. He's already not healthy. Ravens have the second best adjusted net yards per pass attempt against in the NFL. We know Detroit can't run the football. They have to throw it. Baltimore is a very, very difficult team to throw on. So I think the Ravens here win a low-scoring, ugly game with their defense and find a way to cover this number.
Yes, you're right. They have that great secondary, and I love their defense. The one part, like this, I don't want to say it's a stay-away game for me, but I'm so leery of the Baltimore ties on this Lions coaching staff, not just Caldwell, specifically Tyrell Austin. He knows this defense. He's a sharp guy, and I don't know that the Ravens score so much here. I mean, I think we could all agree to that. That's safe to say. But, on that other side, I don't know. Matt Stafford toughing it out. We saw some holes on the last Ravens game. Sure, it was DeAndre Hopkins just making some amazing catches, even despite getting past interference. But in coverage, some of those trips formations where they were kind of peeling back that Ravens secondary, Caldwell and Stafford might be able to find some holes, so that's where I'd be worried. And I guess if anything from this game, I love, I don't know what you call it, derivative betting or something, but Matt Stafford and the gang consistent for getting down early and coming back late. Boy, I'd love to be waiting around in the second half to see what kind of live number I could get on the Lions because, you wouldn't be surprised if they get down early and start to get in it. But, boy, it's a tough game, and I think just a lot of familiarity on the coaching staffs here.
No, that is a really good point to look at, and I've kind of tried to play that angle a few times in the Super Contest, and it hasn't necessarily worked out for me. So not that I'm actively staying away from it, but it is something that hasn't helped me to date, and this will probably be the game where it would have helped and burns me. But one of the things that you try not to do from a betting standpoint is you try not to handicap turnover luck because you really can't. I mean, whatever happens is going to happen. The ball may bounce to somebody or the ball may bounce to somebody else. But in this situation here, you have a Ravens team that's only turned the football over 6 times in the last 7 games. And turnovers were a big problem in their first 4 games. I think they had, 9 turnovers in their first 4 games, something like that. So they've done a much better job of taking care of the football, and they forced the most turnovers in the NFL. So with the fact that you have 2 bad third down offenses, 2 good third down defenses, this is a game that could very well come down to turnovers. And, if you give Joe Flacco a short field, I think he still has enough to put some points on the board. But, I feel like this is a game that probably does come down to those turnovers, and Baltimore's just really good at forcing them, and they've gotten better at taking care of the football. So I'm hoping that, if this game does come down to a turnover battle, that I'm on the right side of variance here in this one. And I watched that Monday night game a little bit, and Joe, I don't know if you did, and if you can comment to this. Flacco was throwing the ball deep. Now, he wasn't connecting with anybody, but at least he was showing that there's still a little bit of arm talent there to get the ball down the field. Maybe at some point here throughout the rest of the season for Baltimore, that starts to soften up the opposing defense, but at least they're taking shots. That's a plus.
Oh, yeah. The only downside is a lot of those were way too deep. Just overthrowing guys with speed, too, like Mike Wallace. He's not a talented receiver, but that guy can still run. That concern is just, placing those balls right now. But still, there's no question. I mean, Flacco, that long frame, he can just whip it out there pretty effortlessly. It's just a matter of connecting. The big issue I saw on Monday night is Jeremy Maclin, been there all season, still not on the same page with the offense. What the heck? I don't know. I think they'd be better off without Maclin on the field, to be honest.
All right, well, we'll move on from that game here. Let's go down to rotation number 18 on the board. That's the Green Bay Packers. You're going to hear a little bit about this game during our odds report segment with Brent coming up next. But Green Bay's get plus 1.5 here. And what worries me about this game is that it now does have some line value because Green Bay has flipped into a favorite at home, and they should have been a favorite at home to begin with. Some places now showing Green Bay -2. So what my worry here is that Green Bay may end up being a pretty popular side here, may end up being a consensus pick. And when you get a consensus pick on a team that's missing a guy like Aaron Rodgers, a little bit concerning there. But the Packers are still invested here. They played very, very well in that game against Pittsburgh last week. I know Tampa Bay got a little bit unlucky to cover, but like I said, or to not cover. But like I said, laying a road price here, I just don't get it. They've allowed at least 220 passing yards in 9 of 11 games, over 100 rushing yards in 7 of 11 games, 49% third down conversion rate for the opponents. The Packers had 5.7 yards per play last week. The problem was they only had 55 offensive snaps and couldn't really stop the Pittsburgh offense. Tampa doesn't have Antonio Brown. Tampa doesn't have Le'Veon Bell. Third straight road game for the Bucs. 3 of their last 4 at home, and their other road game is against Carolina. So they're going to have a chance to play spoiler here in the NFC South. Ali Marpet is out. DeMar Dotson is out. This one is one of my favorite plays of the season here so far, so I'm hoping it actually comes through for me.
I think you're on the right. Taking the value to at this point, I just can't get behind anything Tampa Bay, maybe outside of an over. So, yeah, those issues up front and really the mystery of Jameis Winston, I don't have any clue where he's at from a medical perspective. So, this is Green Bay or nothing for me, especially with the positive signs we finally saw from Hundley on Sunday night. I'm wiping some sweat off my brow because, when that Aaron Rodgers injury happened at him, I was going, Hundley, there's some skill here if they could just change the offense around some of his strengths, and it looks like they may have finally caught up to that, and Hundley might have finally found his sea legs. So, yeah, I can't fault you at all here.
Hopefully Aaron Jones is back for this one as well. And Tampa Bay is one of those teams, like I said, third straight road game. They're getting Jameis Winston back, so maybe that is something that kind of helps them out a little bit. But they're 4-7 now. And I don't know if Dirk Kotter is still going to be around. I don't know if he's going to get that vote of confidence. We've already talked about the fact that Jason Licht might not be the general manager next year, and that Roberto Aguayo thing looms very large at this point. I just kind of wonder how invested Tampa Bay is going to be unless they're playing division foes or somebody that's, going to excite them. When they play Atlanta, when they play Carolina, when they play New Orleans, maybe they're invested, especially with that Atlanta game being on Monday night. Going to play a Green Bay team without Aaron Rodgers doesn't really scream that they're going to be all that invested in my mind.
Questionable at best, and like you mentioned, just the coaching staff, what the players are they responding to them? I have a hard time believing that, especially on the other side of the ball where Mike Smith, who I know you're no fan of, but I think a lot of those defensive players had to have tuned out by now.
Then that would be something that would help against Brett Hundley, who, the Packers need all the help they can get. And Hundley is a guy that can move the pocket, can make people chase him around. And if that effort level is not there, well, maybe Green Bay does have some success here. And in fact, as we're recording this here on Thursday evening, this number has popped up to 2.5 at Pinnacle. So looks like Green Bay continues to be the sharp side here in this game. And I really hope this number doesn't hit 3, because if it does, I know it'll be a consensus play out there with the stale line value. One more game I do really like, and this is one I'm a big fan of, and I think I kind of let the proverbial cat out of the box a little bit earlier on in the week. That's number 26 on the rotation order, the Arizona Cardinals, who are +7 against the Los Angeles Rams. And this is a spot to me where I think Los Angeles is overpriced off of that win against New Orleans. New Orleans was not in a good spot. They've been rolling right along, haven't had many issues. They travel out to the West Coast, and they still only lost 26-20. It wasn't the prettiest game for either team, but the Saints were very competitive in that one in a tricky spot. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, who got 3 catches for 12 yards from Larry Fitzgerald, knocked off the Jacksonville Jaguars. When you look at what the Rams have done here against better defensive teams, nothing against Minnesota, nothing against Jacksonville. They beat Seattle but turned the ball over 5 times. Those are the 3 best defenses that they've seen this year, and they didn't show real well. Cardinals' defense is still legit. The offense has problems, but the defense is still legit. I read nothing into the game in London that Arizona got shut out in. I think the Cardinals are a great look here this week, and once again, I'm hoping that these self-proclaimed great looks actually come through.
I'm siding with you here too. I mean, it's a little more bold sauce because the Rams are just that they're scoring at will on some teams. But I agree with you too on New Orleans. Without those two corners, Ken Crawley, Marcus Lattimore, I think that was a big difference in the outcome of that game. And you flip it on this defense, well, Patrick Peterson is a good Tyrann Mathieu, and I still think Chandler Jones is just a force. No matter what offensive tackle you're bringing, that guy's he's a condor. That's how long he is. So that's going to be a problem for the Rams. And, the bonus here, I like what I saw from Blaine Gabbert, especially on running, extending the pocket. That's what kind of athlete he is. And he's just a survival here. And the bonus is Drew Stanton got in a full practice too. So should something happen to Gabbert against this Wade Phillips defense, you still have another option to sustain scoring and move the offense at least. So, yeah, I think that, there's a lot of talent on this Cards defense, and just another little food for thought. On the other side, on that defense, Trumaine Johnson, I'm not sure he's 100%. The last game, watching that Saints-Rams, he got a little dinged up in that. So I've got to think Arizona is a really decent look. I mean, even past this contest, you're thinking of playing it. If you can get that 7 and a little extra spare change outside of that touchdown, why not? The Cardinals look to be playing well, and that's just a lot of veterans on that team that get real tired of losing.
Yeah, that's true, too. I mean, this is a team that, has had playoff experience lately, and, I mean, they're not out of the playoffs. They could finish 10-6 if they went out, and they got a tough road game in Washington, and then on New Year's Eve they'd play in Seattle. But, we know that this Seattle team is going to be limping to the finish with all the injuries that they have, and they keep adding injuries, which I'll talk about here in a minute. Arizona probably still thinks they have a shot at the playoffs, and if nothing else, the players I'm sure would like to give that vote of confidence to Bruce Arians heading into next season. So I think Arizona's in a play-on spot here, and hopefully it does end up coming through for me. So the three plays that are almost certainly going to make my card, barring some sort of weird injury or something like that, would be Baltimore, Green Bay, and Arizona. So obviously if you're an astute listener out there, you're thinking, well, he's got to have two more. I do have two on the leans list, one that's on the if I need a fifth game list. Rotation number 29 here, I've lost line value on this game, and everybody in the Super Contest has lost line value on this game because this number jumped so early in the week. But the Philadelphia Eagles is a 6-point favorite against Seattle. I've found reasons to go against Philadelphia far too many times this year. At some point, I just need to swallow it and realize this is a really, really good team. And then when you look at that injury report for Seattle, and more offensive line injuries. Ode Ibushi is now going to be out. Luke Jokel's already out. Reese Odiambo's out. On the defensive side, no Cam Chancellor, no Richard Sherman. Deion Jordan and DJ Alexander are questionable. Shaquille Griffin's probable. The Eagles are just rolling everybody. And the way that they get pressure with their front four against this Seattle offensive line, I'm tempted to lay it in a primetime game on the road with the 12th man. This is something I would have never thought about in previous seasons, but with how this year is going, you can't write it off.
And exactly. I mean, I don't want to say not think too much, but maybe we do some Pavlovian gambling, like, those general rules you tend to forcibly learn. Like, I'm tired of betting against Brady and Belichick, the combo that is known as BB. My hand has been smacked too much. I'm tired of stepping in front of the Eagles, and yeah, this is one of those situations. They're a healthy roster outside of that Jason Peters injury, but this defense is nails. The Carson Wentz gets them out of trouble, and right now, it's more of a fade to Seattle for me. I'm not sure this whole thing, like -5, -6, -6.5. It seems wrong to me. The Eagles are a full touchdown better than every team in the league at any stadium. I mean, from Vienna to the moon now. I don't care about this 12th man, Legion of Boom. Those guys are gone. There's no fan out in those stands going to step in and do what Richard Sherman did, or Cam Chancellor for that matter. So, it's just one of those lines I look at and it's like, are they trapping me with this? Because it seems just too good to be true. I'd gladly step on that wagon and join the Philadelphia parade all the way to Minnesota.
And when I wrote up this game preview, first of all, I was stunned to see that Seattle's 7-4 because all you hear about with this team is the negative, all the injuries that they've had. And when you look at the injuries that they've had and what they've had to go through, Russell Wilson should be top 2 in MVP voting, if not win the damn thing, because Carson Wentz has a lot of help. The defense has been good. The running game has been good. A lot of quarterbacks out there that are playing at a very high level have a lot of help. Russell Wilson has no help whatsoever. He's running for his life on almost every play. He's the leading rusher by almost 200 yards on this team. And they're 7-4 with all these injuries, all these defensive injuries. So that's one thing that worries me, is that this team is that ravaged by injuries, has that many offensive line problems, and they're still 7-4. But also, I just look at this game for Philadelphia, and it's like, man, they got a chance to prove again just how good they are, and I'd rather be with them than against them, I guess, is what I'm saying.
No, I can't blame you there, and that's just the problem with this whole. You're exactly right, though. Credit Russell Wilson. I mean, that's one tough SOB. There is no running game. He is basically all they can do to move those chains. And, yeah, against this Jim Schwartz defense, I just think it catches up with them. And, yeah, I don't care if it was a neutral site. I've got to jump on the Philly at this point.
One other game that's on my leans list here, and by the way, if I absolutely have to pick a fifth game play, would be the Los Angeles Chargers because, the Browns are the Browns, and we all know what the Browns are, and we've forever known what the Browns are. And the problem is the Chargers can't really stop the run, but if they flood the box and force Cleveland to try and throw the football, well, maybe that's something that does kind of help out the Chargers a little bit. And then, of course, the Chargers lost to the Browns last year, so there's a little bit of a revenge factor in that one. But the other lean that I like more than trying to make the Chargers laying 2 touchdowns in the Super Contest would be the Cincinnati Bengals, a 5-point home dog here on Monday night. This number anywhere from 5 to 6 out there in the market. It is 5 in the Super Contest. And, this has been a one-sided rivalry, and that's what concerns me is that Pittsburgh's 19-6 straight up over the last 25 in the head-to-head meetings, and they've won by more than 5 points in a lot of those games. But I do expect this to be a low-scoring defensive struggle. Generally, that leads to taking the underdog. The Bengals' offense is not good. 33.6% on third down, lowest number of plays in the NFL by, I think it's 41. And the next closest team is the Chicago Bears, and we all know how bad their offense is. So that's the worry, is the Bengals can't stay on the field. So this defense is going to have to do a lot to shut down Antonio Brown. But Juju Smith-Schuster's banged up right now. Ben Roethlisberger does not look like the same dude that he looked like a few years ago. Le'Veon Bell, up until last week, has had problems running the football. I know he had a bunch of catches last week as well against Green Bay as they were kind of playing a little bit of catch-up. But the Steelers' running game isn't the same. Ben's not the same. If this is a defensive battle, I'm getting 5 in your traditional physical AFC North matchup. It's kind of attractive.
Yeah, I mean the spot and really is Pittsburgh fine-tuned? Those are fair questions, but if I've got a ticket and I'm telling myself it's because of Andy Dalton's good play, this cashes, I have a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I mean, you're lucky you're not talking to my brother. My brother is convinced Andy Dalton's colorblind. And the only reason that he's survived this long in the league is that he knows who A.J. Green is. So his colorblindness doesn't hurt him in that case. He knows to throw to A.J. But outside of that, I think all he sees is orange. And the worry here is that I guess that's why, you can't have confidence in the Pittsburgh ticket either. I mean, they played down to their competition just so consistently. It's got to be maddening for a fan. But, yeah, the biggest worry I have there, Adam, is just Andy Dalton and the lack of respect I have for him. I think he's just hit an all-time low this season. And what really hurts is, like, there's a lot of talent on this Bengals roster. I think Joe Mixon, were it not for Alvin Kamara and Kareem Hunt and some of these others, like, that guy has looked phenomenal in some plays. I mean, just true elite speed is what he has, definition of it. And I'm a huge A.J. Green fan, but I really think this is another case. It's not as bad as Blake Bortles, but I'm convinced they somehow are winning in spite of Andy Dalton some days, because it's just, he's one of those quarterbacks that just makes me want to pull my hair out. So, yeah, anytime I'm thinking of a Bengals ticket, I just remind myself of that Red Rocket.
Well, and I mean, with this being the Monday night game, it's kind of like last call at the bar. You just kind of take home whatever girl or whatever guy is still kind of hanging around. And it almost feels that way with this game, because I'm not laying 8.5 with Oakland without Crabtree and Cooper. I'm not taking 8.5 with the Giants because Geno Smith is the quarterback. I don't really want either side of the Carolina-New Orleans game because I think that game could go either way. I mean, I think that's kind of a coin flip game there at 4.5. Not touching the Chiefs with how bad they've played, but I'm not going to take the Jets here in this spot either with it at 3.5 when it was 4.5, 5 earlier on in the week. Not really interested in laying a big number with Jacksonville. Not interested in taking Tennessee laying a big number. No interest in touching the Denver-Miami game. Minnesota-Atlanta looks like a coin flip. Could I lay it with New England on the road in Buffalo? Sure, but do I really want to against a Buffalo team that slows the game down and plays generally decent defense? Probably not. Do I want to play Jimmy Garoppolo or Mitch Trubisky? I don't think so, and I didn't get plays in time for the Washington-Dallas game. So that's kind of the problem is that, in the NFL this year, and in particular in the SuperContest, when you have to play 5 games, if I can get by playing the 3 games I like this week on a personal level, I'm perfectly fine with that. But I got to find 2 more. So that's kind of the situation I feel like I'm in with Cincinnati.
No, I hear you there, and there's the hook of the contest, too. It'd be real easy to say, oh, no, here's my 3 confidence plays, but not so fast. You got to meet that quota, and, I don't know. Nothing to do with it here, observer, but, I'd be tempted to add that Vikings Zimmer and some points is always one of my favorite sides to be on. I love rooting for the coach, and, boy, if he's getting points, he's awful consistent as a dog.
It's not a bad thought, especially against an OC in Sarkisian who's been, not as impressive as the Atlanta front office was hoping. So, that's a situation where Zimmer and his defensive coaching staff does have an advantage. So who knows? Maybe that is one that makes the card. And also, too, I mean, Atlanta's probably not going to overlook Minnesota, but when you're talking about a Thursday night game in the Dome against New Orleans, a huge division matchup, it's only human nature to have one eye towards that one. So, who knows? Maybe the Vikings do wind up sneaking their way onto my card. But Joe Everett, you can follow him and his NFL Draft Bible work on Twitter at Joe W. Everett. Thank you so much for filling in for this week, man. I really, really appreciate it. We'll talk to you again on Monday.
All right. Looking forward to it, Adam.